make a cheesy ham and potato chowder with a grilled ham and cheese and some banana spice muffins. So essentially a great way to use some leftover Christmas ham if you have it. So let's start by getting our onions caramelizing for our ham and potato chowder. And then we can start working on our banana muffins and all that jazz. Let's see, get that over there. We're just gonna dice these up, pretty, like a good smaller dice. And we'll get them sauteing. And then I'll give my hands a quick rinse and onto the banana spice muffins. Since we got some bananas that are ready to go, and after you've had kind of days of feasts, you want to start using up some of your little bits and whatnot and leftovers in there. So we've got some good amount of ham left over from our smorgasbord last night. So got a couple ham meals prepared for the next couple days, or little bits like some Denver omelets, or maybe a ham and cheese frittata, or a ham and cheese like strudel type thing. So what's there? Okay, let's get these guys in here. And we'll give them a quick little stir around. Coat them up with our olive oil. And let's rinse off our onion flavor on our hands. And let's get working on our bananas here, or our banana spice muffins. Okay, so we're going to start off with our 3 ripe bananas. I've got 2 perfectly ripe bananas that I've had in the fridge for a couple days because they were super ripe. And then 1, not quite, but I feel like they'll balance each other out because I need 3 on here. So give these a good squishy squish. Perfect. This is what you want, nice brown inside, because that's going to make a very sweet and great flavored banana muffin. And then this one's not quite there, but I think will be fairly good. It's actually pretty soft, so let's toss these in the trash. Then we're going to whisk our bananas up until they've kind of are nice and whipped. I don't like to have too big of chunks in my banana muffins, so we'll mash them up pretty good, which we can do with this. And we'll add in a cup of brown sugar. Yeah. Perfect. And you can see how my really ripe ones kind of turn to like a banana mush, while the other ones kind of stay a little bit more in form, which is why they're not as great for banana muffins. I've already tangled up everything over here. Okay, let's get our cup of brown sugar in here. And that's what really makes these banana spice muffins so delicious, is instead of using like granulated sugar, the richness of the brown sugar is just delicious. So we need a whole cup. This is a half a cup. You'll want to firmly pack it down. There we go. Give my hands a quick rinse. We'll give our onions a quick little stir here.
Are you making banana bread?
I am. I'm making banana spice muffins, so essentially banana bread on there. We had some ripe bananas, very ripe bananas that have been sitting in my fridge for a couple of days, kind of being like, bake me up. And with the kids home, it's always nice because these are one of their favorite kind of things to make. So we're going to cream our brown sugar into our banana mash.
And where do you get your recipes every day?
So these are all recipes that I've kind of come up with over time. Tweaking like a base recipe Like when I was a kid, I pretty much made all of my recipes from like the Franny Farmer cookbook. You know, this is like old cookbook my mom had. But then I've just changed them over the years, you know, changing the amounts, switching the sugars out, changing up the fat, because I love to bake with butter over oil to get like the perfect recipe. So just kind of years of practice on there. We're going to add in a fourth a cup of melted butter and then a half a cup of sourdough discard.
And can a banana be too ripe?
As long as it's not moldy, it can't be too ripe. I really like the almost black bananas because they are the sweetest, they get the mushiest, and they translate to the best or the deepest flavor in your like muffin or banana bread. So as long as they're not moldy, which is when I find when they start to get pretty, you know, pretty dark, I'll pop them in the fridge. And then they'll continue to let out their natural sweetness, but kind of keeps them nice and like preserved. That's cream. I'll crack our eggs in here as well. So 2 eggs, and then we're going to cream all of this together. And then it will be time for spices. Wash my hands, got a little eggy on them. But with the way my kids eat bananas, it's like one day they all love bananas and they eat through the bunch in like a day. And then they won't touch a banana for a week. And I've already bought them a whole new, I'd buy like 2 bunches. So I like it's, you know, feast or famine with the bananas. And so either we have a lot of banana bread or banana muffins or they actually eat them. Okay, let's get this mixed in here well. Perfect. Okay. Now let me grab my baking soda because I didn't set it out for these.
So you have a question. Do you have any of the written recipes up?
I do post like recipe cards for my members every couple times a month. We'll send out a couple recipe cards. So I do actually have a couple variations of banana muffins that I do. These are my banana spice muffins, which are different than my like summertime banana muffins. So I do send those out for our things. But for everybody else, we do post all of our lives to the link on our page. So you can always rewatch to create these muffins and stuff at home.
And there's a transcript on all those videos.
Yes, and there's a transcript on everything, so you can always, whatever I say is transcribed, so you can read it too. We're going to put in a half a teaspoon of salt. And then we're going to do a half a teaspoon of ground cloves. A half a teaspoon of allspice. Because we're kind of doing a Christmas spice on our muffins here, since, you know, 'tis the season. And then a whole tablespoon of cinnamon. I'm going to just see whatever this gets me. I think it's close to a tablespoon, so I'm just going to dump it all in. Because creatively, I am out of cinnamon. I have used so much cinnamon this holidays that I've gone through a Costco one plus a small one. So cinnamon is on my shopping list. And then we need a teaspoon of baking soda. And a teaspoon of vanilla extract. We'll mix all this in, and then it'll be time to add our flour, and then they'll be ready to bake. But we do our flour last because this is a butter batter, and if you over mix with the butter and the flour, it leads to a denser muffin, and we want a nice, soft, fluffy muffin. So we're going to mix this up until we have it all together. Make sure that baking soda gets mixed all the way around. Okay. Looks good.
How was the smorgasbord?
It was excellent. The food was delicious. We ate the entire duck. It was gone in no time. The only really main protein that we had left was ham and a few meatballs. The salmon was gone. But I would say we ate probably 75% of the meatballs. And then the ham is so big no matter what that, you know, we kind of put a, you know, put a dent in it, but we still have a lot of ham left over, which is why we have some ham-inspired meals. And then everything, the Jansons were delicious, even with the anchovies in them, but they were scrumptious. And the only thing that I always find is like fun is, we do the cold seafood stuff and the pickled herring 3 ways, and everybody has to try it. And every year you're like, I really don't like pickled herring. But I make it and put it on there every year because that is tradition. But I have wised up over the years. I used to buy, 3 jars and make 3 full jars of the pickled herring in different styles. Now I buy 1 jar and I divide it up so everybody can have a little tasting morsel. We're going to mix in a heaping kind of cup of flour. So it's going to be closer to like 1 1/4 cups. But it really just depends on how soupy your bananas are, if you need to add in a little bit more flour or not. Sometimes, your bananas vary in size. You can have really big ones or really small ones. So what I look for when I do, because I had pretty big ones here, I kind of did a heaping one. But I think I might add in just a smidge more because it's the consistency of the batter that matters more to me than the exact measurement. So I'm going to add about another 2 tablespoons of flour, just because I had some pretty large bananas.
And are you making anything special for New Year's?
So for New Year's Day, I make the traditional, I guess it's like a Southern New Year's dinner, where we'll do the Southern ham, biscuits, Hoppin' Johns, collard greens, and cornbread, because each staple, they like collard greens means you have health for the year. Cornbread means you'll have wealth for the new year. So they all have kind of like a tradition in it. And then I always make some sort of like apple dish, because we put an apple underneath our pillows at night. So it was always a tradition, but growing up, you would put a quarter and an apple underneath your pillow. Quarter represented wealth for the new year, and an apple represented good health for the year. And so you have to wake up and take a bite out of your apple, or you had to eat the apple the next day to get it. And then you were supposed to spend the quarter as soon as you could to get your wealth for the year. So we always do that there. And I just kind of take everybody's apple and turn them into like an apple crisp or an apple pie, some sort of apple dish. Okay, let's get our muffin liners in. We're going to scoop our batter into each one. I'm going to actually grab a metal spoon because I find it just scoops a little bit nicer. And we'll even them out. We're going to start with a good scoop in each one, and then we'll come back over and even out. You're essentially going to fill these to the tippy tops. That way we can get a good, nice bakery dome on it. And then these are going to bake at 350 for about 20 minutes. But we're going to go in with a scoop, and then we'll even out. Hopefully I don't make too much of a mess. And if you want to add in like nuts or fruit, now would be the time right before you scoop them out. You could add in walnuts, chocolate chips, fresh cranberries, or dried cranberries. Both are really great options. Fresh cranberries, of course, make them very tart, but are balanced out by the sweetness of the muffin. And then dried cranberries are a little bit more sweet. So lots of different options to them. Like Teddy loves it when I put fresh cranberries in them. So let's go and even these out now. And always try to make them to the top if possible, because that's going to give you the best little dome on your muffin. But you could stretch this to probably make closer to 18 if you wanted to have more muffins and slightly smaller. They would just bake up a little bit faster. Okay, just about there. Yeah, looking good. Oh, we'll do a little bit in this one over here. And then I'm just going to get a paper towel and clean off, because if you clean off now versus waiting for it to be done, like baked, it's much harder after it's baked on. So just take a paper towel and Just wipe around any little spots that you may have dripped over. And then we can go pop these off in the oven. So these are going to bake at 350 degrees for 20 minutes. I like to bake them, on that top kind of rack to give you that most direct heat that gives you that perfect little dome. Slide those guys in here. Set my timer for 20 minutes. And then we can work on our soup and our ham and cheddar grilled cheese. I'm going to wash my hands because I got a little banana muffin base on it. Yeah, we'll do a quick wipe up too. That way we'll have a little bit of space when we come to make our sandwiches. Okay, we've got our onions caramelizing in here nicely. Let's add a little bit of garlic. And then we'll get our carrots, our celery, our potatoes in there to start to saute for the base of our soup. We're going to do, it's just kind of like a creamy potato and ham chowder. So it works great if you have leftover, ham. Because ham's one of those things where it's like, yeah, you can eat it as like a ham sandwich. But after that, you're like, that's a lot of ham. You need to change it up a little. This will be about, a teaspoon or so of minced up garlic. We'll add it in there. All the little tasty bits. I'm going to turn it up to about a 4 now that we are over here and ready to start kind of cooking up. But our onions have a nice caramelization to them, so will be delicious. Let's get our carrots and then our celery, potatoes, and ham. We're going to give that all a good saute. That way it will add great flavor to the base of it, help make it a richer stew or chowder. The carrots add a nice pop of color, and the sweetness of the carrots, I think, go well with the ham because ham is a little bit sweet, especially ours, since ours was a brown sugar glazed ham. Okay. I'm going to cut my potato or my carrots up a little bit smaller. That way they'll get tender faster in our chowder, so you don't have to cook it quite as long to get the tenderness. Throwing the onions around. Okay, let's get the carrots in there. I'm going to turn it up a little bit now that I'm adding in some of these cold vegetables. Give it a good stir. And now we have by the time I have them trimmed up, it will be probably closer to 2.5 stalks to 3. I'm going to trim them down into smaller pieces, and then we can kind of slice them up. That way we'll have little celery bits in there. It's going to add a great flavor to the stew or like the chowder base. Little pops of green. Make it taste lovely. But I find that celery is such a great aromatic vegetable to use in soups and stews because it adds a lot of flavor to the broth for not a lot of it, It's just a more flavorful vegetable versus like a potato, which is more of a bulk vegetable, but doesn't add that much flavor to your soup. Get those sauteing. Yeah. And let those get there for a little bit. Before we add our potatoes in, we're going to dice up our ham. That way the flavor will come out. So we've got some leftover ham from yesterday. I'm actually going to grab a chunk part instead of the slices because the chunk parts I feel like are better in your soup. Those are all slices. I think here's another chunk. And then we'll use part of this to make our ham and cheddar grilled cheeses using our leftover sourdough from our smorgasbord as well. So when you get a spiral ham, you have parts of it that are sliced and then you have parts that aren't. Using the big chunk parts means you can cube the meat up, meaning you can have slightly bigger chunks of ham, and it's going to have less of that sugar glaze on it if you glazed it. With this, if I have any big pieces of that hard skin on the outside, I'm just going to kind of peel it off because it's going to give not a great texture for it. You're not going to want to eat those, but there we go. Paid the piper. And then we'll add it in here. Again, if you see any fat chunks in there, just cut them off because those won't render down in your soup, which means you'll have a big chewy chunk. And you don't want that. I think we should be good about cutting off all the fat there. Perfect. Now with the soup, I don't put a huge amount of ham in there because ham is very salty and can overpower. So I'd rather keep to a smaller amount cubed up where you'll get lots of little, tender ham bits in there. But you don't need to put as much as if you're saying like a chicken noodle soup or, something like that. It doesn't need to be as big of a presence. There we go. Perfect. So we're going to put our ham in here to saute.
You got another question. How was the smorgasbord? What was everyone's favorite?
So it was delicious. This year, everyone's favorite, well, they were divided. I will say, the duck was a huge hit, except Evie. She didn't like the duck. Imagine that. She loved the salmon. That was her favorite. She had 3 helpings of salmon. So she was the salmon. My husband told me that my Swedish meatballs were the best I've ever made. So that was a good compliment. But the duck turned out excellent this year for it. I did a orange, lingonberry, rosemary, garlic, and thyme kind of glaze on it, and then it roasted and just was delicious. So that was a really big hit. There was none left. I mean, duck, it's one of those foods that you get so little meat off of it. It was about a 5-pound duck. But after about all the fat is rendered down and it cooked, it's a lot of bone, you don't have very much for it. But it was definitely picked apart and so delicious. I have to say, I'm like, I only cook duck, I think, really once a year, and it's for the smorgasbord. But it was so good. That was, I think, the hit on there. I mean, I love the Janssens, and it was really fun because, we had the cheeses out, and then people had to kind of guess what the cheeses were on there because they were all very similar. We had one yellow one, and the rest were different white cheeses, and some are like, I like this white cheese, but I don't know what it is. But that's what makes it fun because you got to have all the different cheeses on the different bread. I will say the Stollen was amazing. It's most of the time I've always gotten the Stollen, we buy it or I get it in my little tin from my mom. But this year I was like, I'm going to make it. And it was so good. We're almost all gone of the Stollen. Actually have a little bit of it left. I did send some over to my parents' house, told my stepdad he could not eat it until my mom got back from Germany. But look at that. You see the little marzipan and the dried fruits in there. So good. Hence why. It's a really good breakfast. It's a very sweet breakfast, but it is delicious with toasted, a little bit of butter on it. So good. It's one of those things where I'm like, you know what? I got to make it fresh every year. So much better than like the store-bought ones. Okay, I'm cubing up my potatoes fairly small so they'll get nice and tender in our soup fairly quickly. I'm doing a chowder base, so this isn't a potato soup where you then blend it to get like a soupy potato base. I'm using Yukon Gold potatoes that will keep their shape, and you'll have little chunks of potato throughout, but we will be adding some cream, a little bit of flour to thicken up the base of our soup, and some cheese in there. We're going to grate some cheese as well. So it will be so delicious. But again, a great way to make a nice soup. If you have leftover mashed potatoes and you want to have a little, like a thicker mashed potato, like a thicker base, you could put in about a cup of mashed potatoes into your stew as well to give you more of that thicker potato bisque way. It's just a great way to reuse mashed potatoes without having to have mashed potatoes again. Okay, I think we're good with our potatoes here. We're going to pop them in here and let them saute for a little bit. That helps kind of start that cooking process a little bit faster. Of course, we can make it in the pot. There we go. Mix that up, give it a good stir. Did I? Oh, there we go. I thought I chopped the whole one. Break them up. And then before we add any of our liquid base or before we add our flour in, we're going to add some spices to get a little bit of heat on them first. So let's get those in here. We've got black pepper, oregano, some thyme, and some bay leaves.
Yo has a question for you.
What's for dinner tonight? I think we're actually going to do a lighter fare tonight since we've had a little bit of very rich meals with the two things. I have some ground lamb, so I think we're going to do maybe like naan pockets or something like that with ground lamb meatballs, but I could change. It could change. I'm thinking of like more of a Mediterranean, a lighter meal tonight, but we'll see if that changes. A lot can happen between now and then. I'm going to add in our fresh thyme. Peeling off just the leaves. And it'll be about a teaspoon of fresh thyme. I added in about 2 bay leaves. They were like broken in half, so we have like couple halves on here. A few of these little stems out. So about a teaspoon of fresh thyme. We're going to add in about a teaspoon of dried oregano. Couple good shakes. About a half a teaspoon of black pepper. Let it kind of coat up. Let those veggie or those spices kind of hit the heat of the pan for a moment before we add, our liquid base to it. And then since I want it to be a slightly thicker, we're going to use a little bit of cheese, but I want it to be a nice kind of stewy chowder-like. We're going to add a little bit of flour in to coat the vegetables up, which will then thicken up our base of our soup just a little bit. So we're going to start. We're going to dust a little bit over, mix it up, and then dust again.
Could you sub in sweet potatoes, or would that change so much?
That would change the flavor of it. I think it actually could work well with the ham because ham is sweet, but it would probably not work well with the added cheese in later. But you could omit the cheese later and definitely do it. Or you could change the cheese. We're going to use cheddar. If you did the sweet potatoes, I would use probably like a Gouda or a white cheese, not like a sharp cheddar that has a bit stronger of a flavor. Okay, we've got our flour here mixed in. We're going to add just a smidge more. I always like to do it in kind of 2 sessions so that it really coats each veggie nicely. And then again, sprinkle. It's going to be about 2 to 3 tablespoons of flour when it's all said and done. Add that over here. We'll mix it in and then we'll start to add in our liquid. What we're going to be using is water with some chicken bouillon. You could also use vegetable bouillon, and then towards the end we'll add a little bit of cream to make it creamier. But here we've got our veggies kind of and our ham all coated up. We're going to start by adding 1 cup of water in, or you could use chicken broth if you don't want to use bouillon. Mix it up. Make sure you scrape the bottom of your pan as you go. It's going to almost form like a thick gravy around the vegetables. And we'll let this simmer. Add a little bit more. But again, just go cup by cup until you have the thickness and consistency you want. You don't want to just dump it all in because it might end up being too much liquid on there, and you won't get that flour mixed into the broth as nicely. There we go. Add a little bit more. Push all of these vegetables down since they always love to hike up on the side of my pot. Perfect. And then we're going to add in a good heaping spoonful of chicken bouillon. If you are using chicken broth instead of chicken bouillon, then you're going to need to add some salt because chicken broth I find is not nearly as flavorful as chicken bouillon. Okay, I've got a smaller, but we're going to do a nice kind of heaping spoonful of this. Your ham is going to help out with some of the saltiness, but it's not going to be enough on its own. So give it a good stir in. We'll let that simmer. Knowing you're going to want this flavor just a little bit stronger because we will be adding in some cream in a little bit as well, but that won't be towards the end of cooking. Give it a good taste. Perfect. We're going to let that simmer. While that is simmering, let's work on our grilled cheeses, our ham and cheddars. Using some of our cheese from our smorgasbord, our ham, and our bread. Let's get, we're not going to do the challah. We're going to do sourdough. Slide this in here. I'll make challah with something next. But I find for grilled cheeses, this is the best. Where did I put my bread? Here's my bread knife from when I cut my stollen earlier because I had to have some stollen for breakfast. Make sure I get the powdered sugar off of it. Okay, we'll make our ham and cheddar sandwiches. So we'll slice our sourdough. I'm going to try to cut it as thin as I can while still leaving a slice, because if you cut your bread too thin, it's going to be really hard to melt your cheese and everything. Let me get my pan going here. My griddle, start it to warm up. And we'll get this going for it. But here we're going to cook it on our little hex-clad griddle pan. I love this pan because it fits nicely over your burner. You know, I feel like the griddle pans that I grew up with were the big, long rectangle ones. But if you have an electric stove like mine, the long ones don't work because you have different size burners. So this is perfect for if you have, you know, electric.
Your question, where do you get that bread back?
I got that on Amazon. I have it in my Amazon storefront. It's actually a 2-pack. You get a blue one and a brown one. They are really, really cool. Like I say, I don't recommend something unless I love it. So it's got like a double layer coating inside. So this is like a plastic, and this is kind of like a tarp-like material. But when you want to do it, you can do it, and it squeezes all of the excess air out. And then you can, after you roll it up, I've got a really long loaf of bread in there, so it's kind of there. But it holds it like this. It's freezer proof too, so you can store your breads in the freezer. But I love it because they're just, when you make sourdough breads, they don't fit in like Ziploc baggies or anything like that, so they work really well. Let's get my butter here. We're going to put a little bit of butter on each slice of one side of each slice of our sourdough. This is going to make 4, half sandwiches, but enough for 4 servings. Okay. We are going to assemble here. Let me grab my cheese grater or my cheese slicer. I've got so many of them. We're going to be using the mousse today. And we're going to slice these guys up. This is one of our, it was an old time cheddar cheese that was on our smorgasbord, because, you know, the fun part with the smorgasbord is the more cheeses that you can have, the better. Now, I always like to have cheeses that I know we're all going to eat. So there are variations of like Gouda, Edam, Havarti. We had some Jarlsberg on there, but just variations of it. My mom would always have really stinky cheeses on hers. We've got our first kind of layer on here. Put this one right over here. Let me give our stew, I'm going to turn it down a little bit. We've got a nice rolling boil here. Beautiful. And then we're going to go grab our muffins out of the oven. Now, sometimes depending on how like soupy or your bananas are, they might need a little bit longer to cook. I turn it down nice and low, let that simmer. But I think they'll be done. Again, we had them at 350 for about 20 minutes. Grab the trivet. But I will give them each a little touch on the top, nice and firm. As long as they're firm on the top, then they're ready to come out. If they have a little jiggle or a wiggle, put them back in for another minute or two to firm up, because they might look done, but if they're jiggly there, once they cool, they will dump in and they will be mushy inside and not baked all the way through. So everybody's oven is a little bit different. And so make sure that's what I always do. It's like the finger test, and it just needs to be firm where your finger doesn't go in any. And that's when you'll know that they will be perfectly done on there. And you'll really want to make sure you do that, because you don't want to work hard and then they look beautiful and you take them out and then they sink in. Let's give this a good stir around. Beautiful. Turn it down nice and low. Let that simmer on here. We've got our grilled cheese cooking right here. We're going to turn it into a ham and cheese now, using our leftover spiral ham from our smorgasbord. So we'll do about 2 slices per one. I am going to trim off the crust and any fat, because those are chewy and they won't be as nice on the sandwich. And that is the sweetest part of the ham, because that's what was glazed. So trim it off and you'll have a better sandwich. And you can just get nice and close to it. But again, you just don't want that on your sandwich. And you're not wasting too much. Don't overpile your ham too much, or it won't like warm up with the grilled cheese. So 2 slices is really all you need. And these are thicker than sandwich slices like ham, so they'll fill you up. And then, of course, you need our second layer of your good old cheddar.
You have a question. What is the top of the slicer for?
The top is just a mousse, because it's cute and it serves no purpose whatsoever. Then you need a mousse slicer. I told you I have a lot of random cheese slicers, and they've all been gifted. I don't think I've ever bought a cheese slicer ever, and they've all been gifted by my mom. So as you can tell how much we love cheese in our family. And I know the convenience of pre-sliced cheese is there, but getting blocks of cheese and slicing it yourself, it gives you just so much better. It's smoother, less dried out, doesn't have the anti-caking agent on it, and it melts better, I think. Now, the trick is when you do have this, and eventually it kind of goes like that, you then just take your wax from the other side, and now you've got a nice flat thing. But we're actually going to grate part of this to go into our soup. Let's put this on. I've got mine burners right around a 5. We're going to kind of heat it up. I'll do 2 flips on each side so that we can have this nice kind of going for it. Let's get our soup here. You can see it's already getting there pretty tender. Looking pretty delicious. Let's get a little bit of our cream in and our cheese in. I'm going to do the cheese first, then the cream. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to slice off a little bit of this cheese. This Little bit here is going to give me about a cup of grated cheese. That's just to show you how little you actually need to go you there.
Oh, what kind of soup?
This is going to be a cheesy ham and potato chowder using our leftover ham from our smorgasbord. We've got carrots, celery, onions, fresh thyme, bay leaves, black pepper, oregano in here, chicken bouillon, a little bit of flour to help kind of thicken up that base to give you that really rich soup. And now we're going to grate in some cheese for this. And this is, again, like, I want to say this is a mix with around a medium cheddar. It's an old world cheddar, but it's not aged so long that it's super firm. It's more creamy, which is actually going to melt really nice into the soup. And it's not quite as strong of a flavor in cheddar. So the sharper your cheddar, it's like the older it's been aged, which means it's going to be less soft and more firm. There we go. We're down 2. And perfect. We'll mix that in there.
Does this soup freeze well?
I will say potatoes are one of those things that don't always freeze well. Now, if you try to freeze it and then let it defrost naturally on its own instead of going from frozen to microwave, it will do better. But I have found when you try to go freeze to heat, potatoes don't hold up as well. But because there is milk and a good base in here, it should help with that. So it should freeze, I think, fairly well. But, potatoes are one of those ones that don't always translate well. But I'm hoping because they're nice and small that they will. We're going to add in about 1/4 of a cup of cream. You don't need a whole lot to get you that really creamy, rich flavor for this. Let's flip our grilled cheese here. And then we're going to cut up some green onions to add for our soup. We've got our first round kind of going, which is, again, the heating up round where we're melting that butter and toasting it up nicely. I kind of rotate here. I'm going to turn up my pan just a little bit, and we'll get those kind of going. I find with sourdough, double flips allows you to get that cheese and ham melted up a little bit better. Give our soup a little taste, see if there's anything else I want to add. So you can just see how rich and creamy this is. It looks just so delicious. Perfect. Let's get our green onions ready. We'll toss these in towards the end. That way they'll keep their nice onion flavor and they won't wilt. We're going to cut off the very bottoms because I don't want the white parts in because those are a little bit too strong in flavor. Okay. Add this in. You can also, these are green onions, but you can use chives as well, or scallions. They're all like in the same family, pretty much the same thing. So we have that. And then I'm just going to grate a little bit more cheese because we're going to garnish with some cheese at the end as well. So just a little small log. But again, when you're like us, and I have lots of cheese now, it's a great way to use up some cheese.
Will this recipe be posted?
We will upload our live, make it available for everybody to rewatch. So you can definitely watch again and recreate these recipes at home. Here we go. I actually might make this banana muffin recipe available for our members because I realize I have a couple variations of my banana muffins, but I don't think I have my banana spice muffins available for everyone on there. Okay. We're getting there. Now we're doing that kind of final toasting up phase for it. And we've got our nice, you can see some of our cheddar is starting to melt here. And it's getting lovely. And with a grilled cheese, especially sourdough, because it is a thicker bread, you want to go a little bit lower and slower. We're going to put in most of our green onions. I'm going to save a little bit for garnishing again towards the end. So I'm going to leave my darkest green ones, and then we're going to put in our more lighter green ones in now. There we go. Adds, again, a beautiful pop of color to it. And if you wanted to add corn to this as well, because corn is also, it kind of works fairly well with the soup, you could add in about a cup of frozen corn in there. but I like it with the way it is because it's kind of like almost kind of like a loaded baked potato, soup, because you have like the ham instead of bacon, you have the cheese, you have a little bit of that cream. So delicious. Okay, we're done with that. We got our muffins here. Let's see how we're looking on. Pretty close here. We're ready to flip, and then we're going to start serving up. Here are our banana spice muffins. We use 3 ripe bananas, a half a cup of our sourdough discard, brown sugar, cinnamon, allspice, and cloves to give you a nice kind of a Christmas spice banana muffin. So very different from your traditional banana nut muffin because it has those great spices mixed with that brown sugar, gives it a really rich flavor to it. Well, let's get ready to serve up because our ham and cheddars are just about done here. Let those toast up. And let's get serving up. Get a plate. And we got the big bougie cutting board today. Okay. And let me get a ladle for our soup. I'm going to turn this off since we are ready. And then let's check on our grilled cheeses, see if we're ready. I think we have them nice and toasted, beautiful. So we're going to coat up so we have our nice ham and cheese melts. Let me grab one of these. We'll do this one. You can see that nice melted cheese on there. Since these are big sandwiches, we're just going to do a half per person because they are pretty big. For lunch today, we have our ham and cheddar melt on our homemade grilled cheese. And we're going to serve that with our creamy ham and potato chowder made with celery, carrots, potatoes, onions, ham. There's some cheddar cheese in here and a nice rich creamy based broth, a chowder base. We're going to top it with some shredded cheddar cheese and some green onions to kind of balance it all out together. And then for dessert, we will have a sweet banana spice muffins with all the flavor of cinnamon, cloves, and allspice in them, plus a little touch of brown sugar for that just nice, rich flavor. Well, guys, thank you so much for joining us here. Don't forget to like and subscribe. I try to do live cooking shows every single day, kind of show you what we're making for our family and hopefully teach you guys something along the way. Again, we do upload all of our videos to the link on our page, so if you ever want to recreate any of these recipes at home, you can just go to our page and search for what we made. So we've got our cheesy ham and potato chowder and our banana spice muffins, and you can watch and cook along with me again. We also have a link to our Amazon storefront that has all of our different cooking gear in it. I've got my little hex-clad griddle pan there, my Dutch ovens, my knives, cutting boards, all the different things I use in the kitchen I have in there for you guys to check out. But again, thank you so much for joining us.